Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Human Echoes podcast, the show where we review oddball movies, have oddball discussions, and occasionally take questions from you, the oddball fans.
I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm Albert Berg, and the oddball movie we are covering this week is a Netflix original from director Oz Perkins.
It's a mouthful.
Do I need to get a running head start? Hold on. Here we go. I am the pretty thing that lives in the house. Whoa! I made it through, Tony.
We've had a few long titles recently, like going back to that Italian one that I'm not even going to attempt to say right now.
No, I can do it. I can do it. Your vice is a locked room, and only I have the key. That one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which one has more. I think that one has more characters in it than I am the pretty thing that lives in the house.
Yeah, whenever I wrote out the tweet for this episode, it fit a little bit better than that one did.
This is a film that was from Netflix Originals. It showed up for me on Halloween, Tony. I sat down in bed. I was like, what do I want to watch? Maybe I want to watch something scary for Halloween. Popped up Netflix. This was top of the fold for Netflix. And this is a movie that's very atmospheric, which is one of those really professional ways to say kind of boring.
Yeah.
I don't want to diss it too much. The plot here is that we have this nurse going to a house to take care of this very old author, who's like, we don't get an exact age, I don't think, but she's got some dementia problems. She's clearly can't take care of herself. She doesn't have any family left around. She's just sort of on her own. She's got enough money to hire this nurse to be there full time. And so this nurse shows up, and we get this really bizarre opening intro where there's like the narration is talking to the viewer directly, and you have this weird kind of out of focus ghost in the background where she's wearing sort of an old school silvery dress, but the face is like, it looks like it's looking in two directions at once. That was my interpretation of it anyway. And it kind of immerses you in the feel that this movie is going for almost immediately. It starts off with just this really powerful imagery that kind of leaves you a little bit unsettled. And the movie is great at this unsettling imagery, but there's not a ton of plot.
Yeah,
we find out
that's got to be the strongest point of this entire movie, are these little asides where you're seeing something kind of like floating through the darkness, coming in and out of focus. Like, it's nothing that is really like, I looked up a lot of comments on this movie, and most of it was like, can somebody please tell me what this movie is about? Like, what was the point of the movie? And that's not a good thing to be getting criticized for.
I think the movie was about death, which is something that, or at least the fear of death, but it didn't do as good a job for me as being clear about that as something like Phantasm did. It's ostensibly a haunted house story. The main character, Sally, I forget her last name. It's a weird name. It sounds like something that Sally Sailor, which is alliterated. She finds out that there is something going on in the house. There's a black mold spot. There's this story that the author lady had written, in her younger days that did not have an ending. And we come to find out that there is a ghost, possibly named Polly Perkins, who was murdered in the house at some point in the past. And it's this kind of cyclical sort of time bending thing about, the cycle of violence, the cycle of death, the fear of death. You've got the author sort of living very close to the edge of death. You have the ghost who has already died, and you have Sally Sailor, who is...
It's not Sally Sailor. Her name is Lily.
Lily? Oh, is it Lily Sailor?
I didn't even get a last name. It's just Lily.
I know for a fact her last name is Sailor. I say for a fact. I'm looking it up now.
It just says Lily on IMDb, so we're kind of splitting hairs there, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought for sure it was spelled Saylor. I remember thinking that's a weird name to say Sailor. Whatever.
And they might have actually mentioned that in the movie and it just didn't make it into the credits, but it's Lily, not...
Okay, I'm sorry. I was using the wrong name.
It's all good.
Lily is living in this house, and her character essentially boils down to, I'm afraid of things. I'm scared of stuff, you guys. I'm scared of reading a horror novel. I'm scared of the ghost. I'm scared of like being by myself in the house. And
even though that's like literally her job, and she is just stuck in this house for like a year, basically. Like there's one sequence where she's like, 11 months just fell off the calendar. She's still freaked out of being alone in the house.
Well, I mean, it is a big house, but no, it's weird that nobody in a horror movie never ever like puts in some earbuds or plays some loud music or whatever you would do
Or brings
when
a
you're alone in the
laptop.
house. Huh?
Or brings a laptop.
Or that? Well, no, okay. So to be fair about that, they're not real clear about which time period this is happening in.
Yeah.
She's still using a corded phone. At one point, we see the author in her younger years using a typewriter. I mean, that's a flashback.
Well, we
so
know that
don't
the author was popular in the 1960s. Like, they did mention that, so you're trying to extrapolate how old she is from there. She probably looked about 30, maybe late 20s in some of the flashbacks. They might have done that just because they had an attractive young actress to play that person. But it's like, I would say that it's probably pretty close to modern day, maybe early 90s based on some of the style stuff.
Maybe it's a Napoleon Dynamite situation where it's modern day, but they just don't have anything.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know, but it does seem like you could do a little something to distract yourself or get used to this. But you do make a good point about the fact that the passage of time in this, you start off, you get like the first couple days in the house. You know, there's that scene where she's talking on the phone. She's sort of freaked out by the phone getting pulled out of her hand. It's like one of two scares in this movie, and that was the first one. And then you just jump to a year later, and she's still there. And things are still kind of the same way. I think that's on purpose, or at least I think it's something that kind of works in the context of the movie because you do have this sort of timeless sense where you're not. It's going for a dreamlike quality, and it does definitely achieve that. So I think that's what's going on there, and similar with the phone thing. I think that's again, whether we're in the modern era or not, it's not really meant to be like specific technology. It's supposed to be kind of this idea of a haunted house, and that stuff wouldn't be around in a haunted house.
Yeah.
You don't have laptops in haunted houses.
And also they did a lot of talking about kind of being stuck in a loop as a ghost. So there's some implications about her character possibly going through similar situations.
Yes, that I don't want to get spoilery, but yes, there's a very circular aspect to this narrative, and the movie does a good job of portraying that in a way that's not like real obvious, but kind of like getting you unmoored from time, where it's just cut to 20 years later and there's no like 20 years later. It's just now the lady's a lot younger and she's sitting at her typewriter and now she's old again. They play around with that. I said the thing earlier about how that it's about the fear of death, but I really think it doesn't do as good a job at that thematic idea as something like Phantasm did, where the horror element really felt like, yeah, it would suck to die, wouldn't it? Like, this would be really bad. This one feels so ethereal and so detached that it's almost hard to be really afraid about anything in the movie.
Yeah, it didn't feel like there was a whole lot of weight to what was happening, whereas like in Phantasm, all of a sudden you're getting a ball stuck in your forehead that's boring your brains out.
There are some really, again, I don't want to belittle this movie too much because there are some beautiful shots. There's the moment where you see like the extreme close up on her eyeball with the ghost like reflected in her eye, and it shows up for just a half a second, but the way that shot is set up is really amazing. And I read interviews with a cinematographer where they like, that's not a composite or anything. They actually shot that with an actual camera.
That's awesome.
And it's super difficult for her to like, she could not move a single millimeter when they were trying to get that shot because it would have gone out of focus. So they do a lot of really interesting stuff with the camera. There's an incredible use of darkness in this movie where not only is there darkness around a lot of the shots, but they go into the darkness a couple of times. There'll be like a dark doorway behind a character and you'll see them kind of wandering around, or it'll focus on the foreground and the character will be in the background as an out of focus thing. It goes into the darkness and then like continues through the darkness until we see the ghost at a different time.
Yeah, they use that a lot for transitions, which I thought was pretty interesting. I kept expecting jump scares to happen there. You kind of told me there wasn't a lot of jump scares, but I knew that meant that there were at least a couple. And a lot of times it's just this very like slow moving through time type thing that they end up doing.
I read also, this is another thing that I'm stealing from someone else, but I think it's a very poignant thought, is that this feels kind of like a short film that goes on for feature length. And I think that it probably would work better as a shorter film. The director described it as a poem. He said, the script was like a poem. The idea of the movie is sort of as this visual poem, which you could get all finicky about. What does that mean, Albert? What is a visual poem? But you know what he's saying. It's supposed to be this sort of evocative, ethereal, kind of not specific. And then this happens, and then this happens. And I think that kind of thing works better in a shorter form where you can get in and get out. And I mean, we've seen a lot of short movies that try to go for that and don't quite work. And this felt like that, but with the extra disappointment of having to sit through an hour and a half of the movie and still not really get like a good clincher of an ending.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I saw that same comment on IMDb, but it was.
I read that on RogerEbert.com, so it must have been multiple people saying it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about it. It felt like it would have been a very solid 25 to 30 minute episode of something. Maybe even 45, so you could explore some of the things, because there is a lot of really interesting prose that's happening. I don't know if the prose actually fits with the movie, but because it's sort of coming from the perspective of the writer at the same time as the protagonist, I kind of liked it. It's kind of hard to gauge how much it actually worked for this movie, though.
Well, and the thing is, there are some really powerful moments that you cannot deny. There's the moment at the very beginning of the film, practically, where Lily? We said her name? Yes, Lily looks directly at the camera and he says, "The pretty thing you were looking at now is me. I'm Lily." And she tells you basically that she's going to die in the next year, and kind of drops all of the, not all of the knowledge about the movie, but sort of gives you a setup for, hey, this is what's going to happen to me. I'm going to die. Keep watching the movie now. And moments like that are really ballsy and bold, and I think there are a lot of those moments in there. They just don't ever quite add up to punching through and making something great that you could really champion as a great movie. It's a good movie. I would say it's a good movie, but it's not something I can go out and tell people, hey, you guys gotta watch this. It's amazing.
Yeah, there's a very particular set of people that I can recommend this to, and most of my friends would absolutely just turn it off after 30 minutes, just out of boredom. There are a few kind of art snobs that I think would really enjoy it, but it's a hard movie to get into if you're not kind of committed to it from the beginning. If you were watching this at 12 noon, on just a random day, it would be a little bit harder. I started this at about 11:30 at night, so I actually got a little bit creeped out by the atmosphere, which is really good for any movie that can actually do that to me. So there are some good merits here. I just feel I don't know if it was the script. It definitely wasn't the cinematography that held it back. There are some really cool surreal moments, whenever she's seeing stuff growing on her arms and things like that. It just did not quite captivate me in the way that I hoped it would. And it's so close to being perfect in that sense.
I think that it's definitely also very purposeful in its avoidance of the more obvious scare. There's, I'm sure you noticed this, but the name of the author in the house is Mrs. Blum.
I was wondering about that.
There was that was one of those things I was like, it's the Blum house. They have a horror author in this house that has written what you would think of as a traditional horror novel, right? Lots of them. She's sort of a female Stephen King type. And yet you're making a movie that's very much not that. It's sort of taking a stand against the traditional horror film while still having some of the trappings of a traditional horror film. As a guy who likes traditional horror films and has no problem with Blumhouse, it doesn't bother me, but I'm not going to get behind and be like, yeah, stick it to him. Blumhouse sucks. Which I don't know that they're necessarily saying that, but there feels like there's a little bit of just a jab there where they're.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if that was a jab or if they were kind of hoping to get picked up by Blumhouse when they originally filmed it.
No, they got. Okay. So I'm going to tell you the story behind this movie. First of all, it is intentional. I read several interviews with the director where he said, "Yeah, you guys noticed that, right? That was, yeah, her name is a Blum. That's the Blum house, right?" So the director of this is a guy named Perkins. Oz Perkins, I think, in the credits. And he had a movie that came out last year in the film festival circuit called Originally, it was called February, and then it was retitled The Black Coat's Daughter. He had to fight the people who picked it up for distribution because they wanted to change it to When Darkness Calls, and he's like, that's the most generic thing I've ever heard. No, we'll go with The Black Coat's Daughter, which I don't know. I haven't seen that movie, but Netflix saw it and they were like, oh, this is good. This seems like the kind of thing that would work for us. They tried to pick it up as a Netflix original. I think A24 had already jumped in and been like, we got dibs on this. So Netflix says to him, basically, doesn't want to say writes a blank check, but says, what do you got next? And he says, well, I got this thing that's kind of atmospheric and, not really a traditional horror story, but, here's the script. And they're like, great, go make that. You guys don't have any notes? And they said, nope. So you're going to give me the money that I want? And they said, yep. He's like, can I have whoever I want to star in it? And they said, sure, just go do it. And so he went and he just got to make his movie for however he wanted to do it.
That's pretty awesome. I love that Netflix is taking a chance on some of that stuff, and it's not always going to pan out, but they're willing to take some risks.
And I think that I don't know what the Netflix business model is exactly. They have to have something that tells them, despite the fact that this is rated at like 2 stars on Netflix, because of all the stuff we've already mentioned that people are like, oh, this is too slow. Something must be telling them that people want to see this kind of movie, or maybe that this is the kind of movie that people will talk about, Tony. I don't know exactly what their strategy is there, but
well, I think part of it's also
interesting.
Like they're trying to fill their library a little bit, since it's harder and harder to get rights as things get more expensive. They're trying to fill that library with a lot of different varied content. So like now they've got a slow burn movie they're never going to have to worry about it flying off of Netflix.
That's true. Yeah. I just think, they're very calculating. When they came out with House of Cards, they're like, all right, people like Kevin Spacey. They like political stuff. Like they had like a checklist of things that they thought people wanted to see. And they're like, here's our show that's going to fill all of those check boxes and also not suck. Usually you would think that when a corporation tries to come up with, all right, we want a thing that's going to hit all those checklists, that it's not going to be good. And yet somehow House of Cards is pretty okay. I finally finished watching the first season last month.
Oh, you finally got done with the first season?
Yeah. I haven't dug into the second season yet, but I did finally watched all the way through what I had already watched and caught up to where I was.
I figure with that show that the people can be so despicable that it would be hard for you to watch. It's definitely a little bit more oriented towards an audience like me that gets into that.
Here's what I will tell you. What took me out of House of Cards. It was the moments when I felt like Frank Underwood was losing control, and I wanted him. Like, I enjoyed the idea of that character manipulating everything so much that when I saw him like start to slip and start to not quite be able to get everything the way he wanted it to, it bugged me. Like that moment where he like has his meltdown on television and can't like get the words right, the IEIOU.
Yeah, he's trying to do the educational thing, like
right,
and it just did not work as an improv.
It was so bad, and I thought like scenes like that I was like, no, Frank Underwood should be in charge. Darn it, this guy knows what he's doing.
Anyway, let's get back to this film before we if there's anything else to say about it right now.
I was interested in the fact that the guy who's the director of this is the son of Anthony Perkins, who played Norman Bates in all of the Psycho movies, and directed Psycho 3. He only directed 2 movies. It was Psycho 3 and something else.
I didn't even know there was a Psycho 3.
Apparently there was at least 4. There was Psycho 1, 2, and 3, and then there was Psycho 4, the beginning or the origins or something. You know what? Hollywood is not... You think that they're out of ideas now. They have always been out of ideas. They have never had ideas, okay? I understand you could be like, well, Casablanca and stuff. Yeah, there are great movies being made today, but they were always trying to run whatever successful thing they had into the ground.
I imagine if you go back to the 50s, there are so many franchises that got up to like 5 and 6 movies. Like you look at some of the old Frankenstein stuff. Like how many did those go to? Like
so many. And they're not good either.
Yeah.
A lot of the Universal Frankenstein or Dracula, all of those, like House of Dracula. I'm not saying House of Dracula. I can't remember exactly which ones I've liked or not, but they're not all of great quality. We've had this discussion before, but I think that it's cool that this guy has sort of got this sense of film history. He's kind of mired in that lore, and that he gets to make this kind of film, whether or not people are going to like it, that he has the opportunity to, to bring his artistic vision to the screen in this way. And Netflix is doing that for a lot of people, and they're not all this atmospheric, but it's cool that they're throwing all this stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're going to end up developing some generic action movies and things like that. Like the other one I can think of that we saw was Beasts of No Nation, which was definitely a powerful film.
It's so depressing, though.
Definitely depressing.
I'm not going to go back and watch that. I'm just going to tell you right now, I can't do it.
I don't think I'll ever go back and rewatch it, but I definitely, I'm glad that I saw it, but I'm not going back. So they're going to end up needing some other things to kind of pull people in and have them watch again and again, like a John Wick type movie. We'll see.
They got Adam Sandler doing the do-over now, so... Which I hear a lot of people complain about those movies, just like I read a lot of people complaining about this movie. I'm pretty sure they had a real good reason for picking those things up, and I bet you a lot of people have watched those and enjoyed them, and not ashamed of that at all. As someone who has relatively uncultured in-laws, not to say that in like a real mean way, they just really enjoy Medea, guys.
Didn't you end up going and seeing Medea, Boo? Or Boo?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Although I wouldn't have been against it. Like I wanted to see. Well, no, was it between that and Inferno? I wanted to see the bigger one, Inferno. But no, I did watch Witness Protection on DVD at their house, a part of it, and like I talked about that a couple episodes ago. But I did not hate that. I wasn't sitting there like this is the most offensive thing. It's like this is kind of dumb, fun. Yeah, okay, well, I get this. I get the humor here. I've laughed several times.
It's the reason why Paul Blart is making Kevin James a lot of money. Sometimes people just want to turn off for a little bit.
Yeah, so sometimes people want dumb comedy. It's okay.
Yeah, it's also okay, why so many network TV shows can be kind of dumb. People aren't really looking for highfalutin content all the time.
Speaking of the dumb network TV shows that everybody loves to complain about, but also everybody in the world who's not complaining about it watches it, did you hear about Big Bang Theory getting a prequel?
No, I did not.
They're going to have a prequel series, and everybody's going to hate on Chuck Lorre, and he's going to still make a boatload of money because that dude cannot make a flop, apparently.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what Chuck Lorre's net worth is right now.
I can't even imagine what the sort of artistic sensibility of somebody like that is. Did you ever watch The Big Bang Theory at all? Sorry, not Big Bang Theory. The other one, the 2.5 Men.
I saw a few episodes of that and I despised it, but my dad loves that show.
I remember watching it. I think I had some of like the first season on DVD and I watched it. He always has, at least on 2.5 Men, I don't know if he still does it in Big Bang Theory. He has like a card at the end of the credits that is on for like a quarter of a second. And he just writes a little essay for every episode of television that he does. Sometimes it's just like one line. Sometimes it like fills up the whole card. And I would imagine, like back when those started airing, I mean, there was DVDs and stuff, but most people didn't have DVRs. So it would just like go by in a flash and you'd be like, what was that thing? And I always thought that was kind of cool. I don't have like all of, I don't remember anything that any of them ever said, but I would always pause them and read them when I could, like on the DVD, like, what does he have to say here?
Well, I do like that attention to detail that he's putting into it. Like, even if it sounds simple, it's still something that's not necessary that he's taking a moment to do. And as far as his work, he is just really in tune with that frequency that people like for a sitcom. Like, so yeah. He has just got it nailed down.
So I don't know. I'm not here to bash on anything. I'm just saying there's stuff out there for everybody who likes no matter what, likes whatever. And sometimes they'll surprise you. You know, sometimes the people who like Medea will then go to Oscar bait movie and be like, that was really good. You guys should go watch that. My mother-in-law was on the phone with my wife just yesterday, telling her you got to go see Hacksaw Ridge. It's amazing.
I still do want to see Hacksaw Ridge. I didn't have any urgency to see it, but I might see it the next couple weeks.
I love that trailer so much. I want to see it. I went with my wife to see Doctor Strange and wrote the rundown on that, which was, I talked about it on the bonus podcast during the live the 24-hour extra live stream, which you guys can check on go back and check on that on our channel. But I didn't come out of that like all excited. It was a good movie. I felt like this is good. This is fine. I can't get pumped up about it. And I was disappointed by that. But I'm still excited to see Hacksaw Ridge. And this week, I was Arrival coming out. We usually talk about the upcoming movies at the end of the podcast, Tony, but I'm very pumped for Arrival also.
Yeah. And before we get any further, do you have any final thoughts on the movie we watched?
No, I'm interested in this director. I'd like to see kind of how he develops, but I'd hope that he gets a little bit more populist with how he makes these movies. Goes just a little bit, gets a little bit of the actual Blumhouse in his Blumhouse that he has.
Yeah, because the main difference between this and Blumhouse is there's actually a ton of tension in Blumhouse movies.
Yeah.
And this movie could have served to have a little bit more tension in it.
Well, not every Blumhouse movie. I mean, you also have things like The Purge and stuff like that, where it's all sort of actiony and, slasher type violence, and that's fine too. They cater to a lot of people. I'm not a Blumhouse hater by any means. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Did you have any final thoughts, Tony?
I was kind of wondering what you would think about comparing this movie to Darling. Like, I feel like Darling is the superior movie, but this might actually have a slightly more coherent story.
I thought about that while I was watching this. I kept sort of making that comparison in my mind. I think Darling, the reason I like Darling is because it has a much stronger edge to it. This movie has those bold moments, but Darling sort of lives in those bold moments where, and very sort of raw, rough, like in your face kind of, it's still stylistic. Like both of these movies are very much, not like there's not like a real definitive ending. They kind of give you a little bit of, I mean, you know what happens at the end of both of them, but it doesn't feel like, yeah, I've really sunk my teeth into this when you get to the end of either this or Darling. But there is a lot of comparison and contrasting to do because they're both stylistic, but because Darling is stylistic in a different way. I think Darling is a hungrier movie.
Yeah.
That's a weird way to describe it, but it feels like that's a movie that's just like, I want to do something, I'm just kind of like, oh, and I am the pretty thing that lives in the house, just kind of like, you're gonna be scared now, maybe, or maybe you'll be scared later, and both of those have their own place, but for me, it works better with Darling.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more savage, a little bit more action.
Both on Netflix, by the way, at the moment, anyway. So if the Darling is still on Netflix when you're hearing this and you haven't seen that, we always recommend check out Darling.
Definitely. I think that's all of our thoughts on. I have the movie written down somewhere. I cannot remember to say.
I am the pretty thing that lives in the house is the name of this movie, Tony.
I am the pretty thing that lives in the house. That's quite the acronym.
Next up, we have our segment that we like to call Trailer Talk, where we talk about the trailers that we were excited about this week. We didn't have it last week because we weren't excited about any trailers last week, Tony.
I'm sure there was something to get excited about, but we didn't look that hard because we were under the shadow of Extra Life.
That too. But this week we had some really cool stuff, a couple of comic book things and one horror trailer we're going to discuss. I'll just go down them in the order that I have them written down, Tony, starting with Wonder Woman.
I've been sold on this movie since I saw the first trailer, but the more I watch it, the more I like Chris Pine's character. The more I like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I liked her in BVS, and she was probably the best part of that movie. So her getting her own movie, and it looks like it's going to at least be a solid looking film. And with BVS, you started to see the holes in the narrative as more trailers came out. This one seems like it might actually have a full coherent plot to it.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure who the villain is going to be, and I spent a lot of time in my Doctor Strange post this week talking about sort of the problem with comic book movie villains and how they just sort of stand in for like this external thing that's not necessarily linked to the internal struggles of the characters. But you're right about the visuals here, because I was watching this, I wrote down, sort of the contrast that I saw in these trailers, because when you're on, what is it, Themyscira? Is that the Amazon world, wherever, their version of Asgard, which is not another place, it's a special island, but their island, it's like the color blue and the color green are so pronounced and beautiful and like shining out. And then she goes into the real world and everything gets brown and red, and like the war and everything kind of like has this darker bleak, the blue kind of comes back for the war scenes, but it's like this like dull blue, the kind of drained out blue that you get sometimes in horror movies. And I thought that the use of color in this was really great. Obviously Gal Gadot looks great.
Yeah, she always looks great.
And you put her in that Wonder Woman costume, and
she just pulls it off. She's got a look of like kind of disdainful hate that she could pull. She just does it for me for that role. I mean, I'm sure I like her in other stuff. I haven't really seen her in much.
Like, she's in the Fast and Furious movies. Have you remember her in that?
I have only seen the very first Fast and Furious movie.
Oh, you're so deprived, Tony.
I've got no problem with it. It's just like by now it's like, man, I got to watch like 7 movies to catch up.
You get to watch 7? That's like finding somebody who hasn't seen any Marvel movies and you're like, oh man, I've got them all here. Like, so let's start with Iron Man and then Thor and Iron Man 2 and like the Avengers and Captain America and they are like practically superheroes at this point too.
Pretty much.
But I thought,
I've seen with like The Rock carrying a giant minigun and walking into combat like he's in Grand Theft Auto.
Yes, it's essentially Grand Theft Auto the movie, Tony.
I can get down with that.
But I liked the action was really great too. I mean, I've seen some people complaining about the use of slow mo, which I don't think I'll ever complain about the use of slow mo. It's pretty cool. Makes everything look awesome. You know, her like sliding under
details,
people,
like
chopping through beams. Pillars. I was trying to say pillars and beams at the same time, Tony.
I even just like it whenever you're watching like sand or something go in slow motion. You're seeing like the individual granules like tumbling in the air while she's sliding by. Like, I mean, it's awesome. What's wrong with slow-mo?
How vulnerable do you think she is to like
I've always
gunfire?
wondered that. Like if she actually got shot in the skin, would it hurt her?
Well, we see one of the other Amazons get shot, and apparently that's one of the pivotal moments in the trailers is the soldiers come to the Amazon island. One of them takes a shot at this Amazon warrior that's doing this incredible like Tomb Raider swing from a bow with a rope attached, and
she launches an arrow into the wall, slides down, and while she's swinging is getting ready to fire another arrow,
and then gets shot. And we don't see like blood go everywhere, but there's a reaction of Wonder Woman's face when she sees her get shot. It's like, oh crap, they got guns. And it feels like that they could do damage to her, which I think is cool. She's very much, she's obviously got great reflexes because she's able to bounce the bullets off of her wristlet things, but it's, I'm not sure how fast she could. She's not the Flash. She can't stand in the middle of machine gun fire and reflect back all the bullets, can she?
And I think we'll get that answered whenever she's running through no man's land.
I guess. Which she does do in this trailer.
Yes.
So we'll find out. I don't want to get too pedantic about that, but it did kind of make me wonder, like, how powerful / invulnerable is she? The next movie is about another DC character in a very different tone.
Before you run on that, I just want to say, I think that the bad guy is probably going to be Danny Huston or Huston. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. He's been awesome in a lot of movies. He was in Children of Men. He was the main bad vampire in 30 Days of Night. He was the Axeman in American Horror Story, and I really liked him in that. So he'll probably be the one, along with that weird woman with like kind of broken like face, like it's almost like a doll face or something. It's really an odd looking
I saw that.
costume,
I wasn't sure what to make
awesome.
of that. I didn't know what that was supposed to be exactly.
Yeah, maybe if we read the comics a little bit more, we would know. Like, I don't know if that's I don't know who that's going to be, but that is an intriguing villain. We'll see how it turns out.
Anyway, moving on to the other trailer, Lego Batman trailer 4 at this point. And I still don't feel like we've seen too much, Tony.
Yeah.
Normally, if you're
this was an actual like introduction to what's happening with Batman, where he's just really lonely and trying to like kind of cope with everything in his life. And I don't know, it was weird to have a trailer set that up so clearly.
And with it's so bizarre that the grim, gritty, like, we're taking Batman really serious movie didn't touch on that. It just had it like Batman's like running into stuff and punching people, and he branded some guys, and then like he ran some car into stuff. And this movie's like, hey, we got laughs and stuff, and also Batman's afraid to lose family again, so he pushes everybody away because that's in his character. And you're like, what? Whoa! Oh, they went like they're taking an actual serious.
They're putting a story arc on like Bruce Wayne.
Well, they're deconstructing the whole idea of Batman, but not. I say deconstructing, and not in the sense that like Batman's stupid, but like actually taking a look at his like real inner demons and why he is the way he is, and also jokes.
Lots of Michael Cera ripping his pants off and all that. Which I can totally see Michael Cera doing the voice for a young Robin. Like that fits pretty well.
I thought it was great too that they have that plot point where the police are like, let's work with Batman. We'll work together. And Batman's like, I hate everything about this. But especially in the world of something like the Lego movie, like in a grim, gritty version of Batman, obviously you can kind of say like, well, the cops might be crooked or they might try to do something, the reason Batman exists is because, the cops can't be trusted with some things. But this is the lighter tone, and it's like they're trying to reconcile the 1960 Batman where he does work with the cops. Like he just talks to the cops. And he's like, okay, guys, here they are. I've arrested them. And like the cops call him up and be like, Batman, we need your help. And it's not like this vigilante thing. He's just sort of like a super rich police officer who wears an outfit.
And I just like that. I also love that Will Arnett is like, he's got the deep, gritty Batman voice, but he it also has that note of comedy to it the whole time. So it feels like the perfect, like, subtle parody of him.
Yeah, I don't want to get too excited because the Lego movie for me was so perfect. And I told myself, okay, I'm going to be ready to be disappointed by Lego Batman because it can't be as good as the Lego movie. Like it just can't. I can't see that. But the more I'm seeing from this, from the trailers and from the ideas that we're getting here, and also the deep into the rogues gallery of Batman that they're going, where they have the Joker, but somebody was like listing off all the villains that show up in the trailer when he's like got his whole rogues gallery there facing off with the Joker. I was like, these are some Batman deep cuts. Like this is not Bane and, the Riddler and stuff. These are like the Dome Batman villains. And they're just going to throw all them in there. And I thought that was
the sadness the Joker has when he realizes he's not Batman's only villain right now.
Well, and the whole like making fun of Batman v Superman where is like, my main villain is Superman. It's like, but he's not a bad guy.
It looks amazing, and if it's 80% as good as the Lego movie was, I'll be pretty satisfied.
Yes, 80% of the Lego movie is still like 120% of most other good films. But final up in our roster, we have a horror movie. I don't know how wide this one's gonna go, Tony, but it is kind of in our wheelhouse. It's a movie called Pet, which I don't know what to think about this trailer. You kind of suggested it.
That's kind of why I brought it up, because I'm trying to figure out like what the angle they're trying to take here is. It's with it's Dominic something. He's one of the guys from Lord of the Rings. He was on Lost. I can't remember his last name offhand right now, but he's basically playing a creeper who's stalking a girl. He gets the girl, locks her in a
boom.
Yeah, just locks her straight in his basement or whatever. Looks like he might be a cop based on his uniform. I can't tell if he's a real cop, rent-a-cop, or what the deal is there.
Oh, I didn't realize he had a uniform, but my first guess would that he's like a dog catcher.
Could be that too, like especially because he has that sort of cage. There was a uniform. I didn't get a perfect look at it. Okay. And
he also has drugs to drug things with, and also potentially people.
So it would make sense that he's a dog catcher or something like that. And the title of the movie is called Pet, so it would fit in even more with that whole theme. But whenever he gets the girl in the basement, like there's just this sudden shift where she starts like bashing her face against the cage, and he's like talking about like how love takes work and all this, and it's pretty creepy stuff. And then she just kind of goes off the rails a little bit, and it starts getting different. And I'm wondering what angle they're going to take with this, and it fascinated me in a little bit different way than a lot of movies have recently, or a lot of trailers have.
Looking at this, I wonder what the message of the film is, and if it has a coherent message. Like, it could just be like, man, like he puts her in a cage, but then he doesn't realize that she's a cyborg, and she like breaks out of the cage and then wrings his neck. That's definitely one way they could go. But I get a little bit nervous that they kind of go in the direction where what's the movie that I remember the name of before and I can't remember it now? Your vice is a locked room, and only I have the key. Where yeah, the guy is a rotten turd and he treats women wrong, but the women he treats wrong are also rotten turds. So there's not really any bad stuff to be thought of anybody, or everybody's bad. I like the idea that you're kind of going to take aim at the sort of quote unquote nice guy, who's like, I just want a girlfriend, but like, show that, hey, that guy's actually kind of a creep and maybe you shouldn't be acting this way. But then to like make the I don't know. There could be a whole girl power thing. It could just be muddled, Tony. They might not have like a particular message they're going for, but I would like it if they did. I've seen Hard Candy and I know that narrative, and that's kind of interesting. But I worry that there's going to be some mixed signals sent here, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, and it very well could be that. I wasn't 100% sure on this. I thought the movie looked intense, but I don't know if it's going to end up being a good movie. Like like I don't know if it's going to have like the intensity of Don't Breathe or was some of these others that are out there.
Well, and I thought about Don't Breathe when I watched this because that was a movie that I saw people. I won't say spoilers for it, but there was some stuff that happened towards the end that people took some like real issue with from the feminist social warrior kind of social justice warrior kind of view, which I don't want to. I think that there is some legitimate. I don't use social justice warrior as a blanket like negative, but in this case, I'm using it as a negative. And they were like, this thing like shouldn't have happened, and the way that was presented in that movie, I thought it was about like breaking out and having some kind of empowerment and showing the potential for the bad, but then having that reversed. Again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers and speaking very generally here. If you know the movie, you kind of know the scene I'm talking about towards the end. And so they're even within the circles of people who would, agree with a message about like, female empowerment, they might not all be able to agree what the message is or what is trying to be said. And that's tricky too.
It's hard to make movies, guys.
It's hard to be clear. Sometimes even when you're just saying like, this is what I want to say, you muddle your message and everything.
It's even like today's movie, because I often talk about how I think a lot of studios ruin movies and like they take away the author's intent and they try to put their own message over the top of it. Sometimes the author needs a little guidance. I
thought about that when I was reading that interview from Oz Perkins about how Netflix didn't have any notes till the very end. He said they kind of mentioned a few things and he's like, yep, I can do that. Wasn't anything egregious. I thought, what if he had worked with a studio that had notes? What if he had worked with somebody who said, you know what, this is good. What if we like amped up this angle of it a little bit more, made it a little bit more traditional, still kept that kind of creepy edge, and, given that feedback to him, I don't know if he would have taken that. He might have like stormed off in a huff and said, no, I'm not making that kind of movie. But if he had listened to that, I wonder if we would have gotten a slightly more satisfying experience that still worked on some of the levels that the movie worked on. The studios are not always the villains, though.
As often as I want to vilify them. They are the reason why we have so many good movies out there.
Speaking of the people in charge, did we get any questions this week, Tony?
We did get a question. This is from our friends over at the Comic Noob Show. They ask, it's election day. Please list all forms of torture you would rather endure than relive this election cycle. Like, what is a form of torture?
The election cycle is fine. The election cycle has actually been immensely entertaining. I just didn't want it to end. Let's just like stay in the cycle forever. We got up. Today is voting day. We're recording this on voting. I don't know if you guys can see. I actually have my I voted sticker on.
I didn't get up early enough to go vote because like we do this at like 8:30 in the morning. So
I had that like real sickening feel. Like I was just sitting there like, no matter who I vote for, I'm going to have to go home and take a shower. Just, I did end up voting. I'll tell you guys, I voted for Gary Johnson because I could not bring myself to vote for either of the mainline candidates. And I thought, not that I really want Gary Johnson to win, because I've said that before, but I thought maybe if other people are sickened by the main two candidates and they also vote for the third party, that the third party ideals will get more traction and we can have more than just the two voices in the room. That would be, I think, a positive outcome for the election if there was enough. Because don't they base sort of how funds get allocated based on how many votes came in the previous election?
I can't fully speak to that. I don't know enough about
campaign I thought I'd read somewhere that for like public funding, if you had gotten a certain percentage of the vote, then you got a certain percentage of the public funding for election campaign money. And
it would be nice if that got spread around a little bit. I hate the idea that they can even do commercials to begin with, but like I would like to at least see that third party option be there, or a really strong independent be there.
You don't like this? I mean, what would you replace? Why don't you like commercials for the candidates?
I don't like the idea that basically you've got so many special interest groups being able to pump as much money into it as you want. This election cycle was particularly bad about not showing any plans. It was just like you saw the crazy Hillary holding a sledgehammer breaking America. Then you saw like and he grabbed her by the blah, blah, blah. And over again, you saw like all these things that weren't directed at whatever the candidates wanted to do. It was more just don't vote for this person. And
well,
I hate that.
Most of the campaign, right?
Yeah.
It's people who are voting for Hillary are voting against Trump mostly,
and vice
versa.
Yeah. I just feel like there either needs to be a much lower limit on how much can be spent, or they just need to do away with it in general. It's like us in New Zealand are the only places that allow you to do prescription drug commercials, and I think that's a pretty abhorrent thing too.
Yeah.
I feel like it just goes on too long. Maybe you should have like 1 month where you can run ads. No more. Like the point of running an ad should be to inform you on what's going on. There are so many referendums that are on my local ballot where they were just like, no on this. They don't even tell you what it's for. They're just like, no on Amendment 72. No blank checks for Colorado. It's like, tell me what Amendment 72 is, and I might be able to decide if I want to do that. Like, I know I should be doing my own research, and I've done a little bit. I'm going to be doing more before I go in today. But tell me, like, if you're going to run a commercial where you're paying probably thousands of dollars for a spot, tell me what the hell I'm voting for or against.
We got an ad for, like, our local city councilman race, and it was just the pictures of the incumbents, and then it said, are these the people you want running your local government? And then like the pictures with the names of all the people who are running against them. I tweeted this out. I don't know if you saw this, but the thing about it was all of the incumbents are, except minus one, are black. And like the people who are, running against them are all white. And so it came across like the most racist thing. Just like, do you want people like this running and your government? I was like, I don't know what these guys did. The boat ramp sure is nice. They've got some sidewalks going up around town. That's pretty cool. Local government seems pretty okay, and I'm kind of ticked off that you can't say anything about any of the issues that you have an issue with them about. I said issues 3 times in that last sentence. So I voted, except for the one guy who was a crook, who was the only white guy on the he was in some big legal trouble, and he was outside the polling place voting, and I was like, nope, not voting for you, Messick.
Calling him out.
But I voted for all the incumbents other than that, just because I got ticked off about their like weird racist campaign.
Yeah, it's just overtones of racism. There's a little bit of that going on in the main races too. Like it was just a bad season for that sort of stuff. I'm glad that I barely watch like TV except for football anymore. Like where I have to watch commercials, everything else is either DVR or like just straight up Netflix. I'm so close to being able to cut the cord. The only thing keeping me there is the NFL. They started streaming their Thursday night games on Twitter in full HD, so like I feel like it's coming in the next few years that we're gonna have options.
I feel like I'm going in the other direction. I mean, I'm enjoying a lot of sci-fi's cover or production stuff like the Candle Cove and Z Nation, and I think about like, what if I canceled my cable subscription? But A, it's bundled in with my cell phone thing, so it doesn't like really cost me that much extra, and B, I really like Z Nation and stuff, so, and my kids like to watch all the kids programming.
Yeah, I imagine having kids would make it a lot harder to cut the cord.
I mean, there's still plenty of other programming on Netflix and things. It's just there's the things that they like. You can just put the TV on them and be like, all right, just turn on Nick Jr. and like the living room has that on. Not all the time. I don't have the TV on all the time, but the box is running all the time, so they can just turn the TV on and be watching whatever's on Nick Jr. and have people asking them for help.
And sometimes
everybody on Nick Jr.
minutes.
is like, I need your help. Tell me how many boxes are in this stack. And I'm like, count them yourself. You're an adult superhero person who's tiny. Team Umizoomi, you have a robot. How can you not figure this out? You have a sentient self-driving car.
We kind of got off topic from the question. We were supposed to talk about tortures we would endure to not have to relive this or not have to deal with Election Day.
I guess watch a lot of episodes of Team Umizoomi.
I would, I'd honestly be waterboarded if I didn't have to deal with any of this.
I don't know about that.
Hey,
have you ever been waterboarded? I've heard it's not a fun time at
Yeah, but
all.
I would rather drown than deal with these people sometimes,
I don't want to take that tack, Tony. I like to think that the country will survive.
It'll survive. It's just, it sucks. It really does.
I mean, there's the things like, of all the bad things, I talked about the local ballot, but I got to vote for senior citizens who, are living in a house of below a certain level to be able to not have to pay property taxes anymore if they're, not making any income. So, I got to vote for medical marijuana in my state.
Did you vote for or against?
For.
Good.
I voted for. I think that I'm not necessarily a giant proponent. I don't think that I want to do it, but I also think that outlawing anything that could be a medicine is kind of dumb.
Especially in a state that has such a problem with prescription drugs like
right,
opiates.
Like painkillers are a drug. We still give people drugs to help deal with their pain. There's nothing special about marijuana that makes it like way different than something else like an opiate. Why? Yeah,
the only difference there is like they both do the same function. They're not fixing the pain. They're not fixing inflammation. They're just helping you cope with it, and one's just a lot less addictive than the other.
Yeah. So I think that could be a good thing. So the country can still go in some good directions.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the people who are listening to this are going to know who won.
Yeah.
And I
most likely
can't get excited about either one of them. I can't bring myself to be like, yeah.
One of the issues that's most important to me is this the right to euthanasia, basically for people with terminal illnesses. I've always felt that it was kind of cruel that like there are people that are really just at the end of their rope and in pain, and sometimes for years at a time with really bad injuries, or not injuries, but illnesses. And I feel like if they want to, they should be able to like keep their dignity and choose the right to euthanasia. So that's on the ballot this year in Colorado. A lot of other interesting stuff that's probably the biggest one for me as far as individual ballot stuff. They're trying to add another like 75-cent tax to cigarettes, which I don't really care about. I don't smoke. But it's getting kind of ridiculous that people are paying like $7 a pack for cigarettes in some parts of the country. So I might vote that one down. It just depends, because they didn't establish what they were going to use the money for.
Yeah. You know what's not on the ballot that makes me mad? There's not like a new library on the ballot. I want a new library in my town, Tony. They peg it to property taxes, and property taxes were down for like 10 years because property values were down. And we can't get ourselves this new stinking library. Then we have just like this box that's been around forever, and it's ugly and it's like small, and I don't like going in there because Bob works there. And Bob won't stop talking to me when I go in the library. Build a new library that doesn't have Bob in it for Milton, Florida.
It's like,
that's what I want.
Straight up, Bob, you have ruined the library.
You have ruined the library for me. I cannot go in there to look for a book because I will stand there talking to you for an hour. Because you'll be like, well, what about this book? I read this and this was good. And then what about this book? And have you checked about this? And I'm like, oh, I lost a bunch of money in this investment. Like, I don't care, Bob. I'm using your real name on my podcast. I'm sorry. Everybody who lives in Milton, Florida will be able to go to the Milton Library and know about you. And I'm not trying to put you on blast. Maybe I'll beep your name out.
But just leave it on blast. If he wants to, like, he'll just start noticing some extra charges for every book you check out. Be like, wow, Albert loses a lot of books.
I don't go. What books? I don't check out books anymore. I can't go to the library because of Bob.
Maybe people are just too polite to call him out on it.
Maybe he's the only IT guy that'll work for him.
Or maybe he's like Batman and he's just really lonely.
No. Bob man.
Bob the Librarian. Sounds like a bad Chuck Lorre sitcom.
You never know. Oh no! There will not be a Troll Hunter remake, Tony.
Really?
I was just pulling up the news, and they've canceled that. I mean, it had been a while since I heard anything about it, so I thought, maybe they were taking a while off, but I thought our pitch for the Troll Hunter remake was a great pitch. I just want to say our idea about like using the same dude but having like an American film crew follow him, and maybe he like comes over to Minnesota or something, or maybe they're actually over there in wherever he's at, and like just making it a sequel. That was a great idea. Why couldn't you guys have done that?
What'd be really funny is if he encountered a Sasquatch out there and didn't know how to fight it. Just all the UV lamps don't work.
We talked about this a little bit earlier in the show, but are you excited about the movie Arrival, Tony?
I am actually. I've refused to watch any new trailers of it because I'm sold on the movie, and this is the type where I want to have some things revealed to me. So I am pretty much dead set on watching it. I don't know if I'll be going opening night. Probably depends on if we're doing a bonus podcast. We haven't done a bonus podcast for a while, mostly since you switched over to doing the different types of or the different Tuesday reviews, because a lot of times you were doing a rundown for the movie we covered on the podcast. We decided that was getting a little bit too granular, like a little bit covering the same ground. So
Right.
now you go to a lot of these movies that I want to go to, and I'm like, damn it, no bonus podcast. So maybe The Arrival's a good one to do that for. I don't know.
I'm definitely going to write about The Arrival. I think I'm going to write about The Arrival anyway. That's my intention. I'm wondering what the like. I'm follow. So we do this thing called HSX, or Hollywood Stock Exchange, where we like try to guess how much money a movie is going to make opening weekend. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out if this is the kind of movie that people are going to go see. Like a lot of people.
And this is by the time this podcast comes out, it's going to be out, right?
Yes, it hits this Thursday or Friday, and this podcast drops on Friday. So
Yeah, so
it'll have just come out.
It's kind of hitting that like if it was a Thanksgiving weekend thing, I think it would hit a lot harder. But this seems like it's almost a little premature to get like a huge amount of heat, but it does have a really good cast. Like you're talking about Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, and like Forrest Whitaker. Like it should have some star power behind it. It should get a little bit more attention. Like I feel like this is probably about a 50 million open weekend.
Oh, really? Because it's tracking on HSX as like 20 for the whole run.
That's not good.
Maybe
Maybe I should be putting some money into it.
So you're thinking big.
I'm thinking it's going to be decently big.
I don't know that I'm actually I might have it might be just 20 million for opening weekend, but I don't know if like it's one of those it's a science fiction movie, but the way it's been advertised, it's not like a giant. Okay, yeah, 66 million currently on HSX for the whole run, 23 million for opening weekend. I don't know that it's the way the trailers have been. Everybody, all us film nerds get excited because there's no spoilers and it's not like some big bombastic action movie. But I think that's the kind of science fiction movie with aliens coming to Earth that most people want to go see. And I don't know how that's gonna play.
Well, it didn't
with
exactly
the
work
larger
for
audience.
Independence Day Resurgence.
Well, yes, but that movie was bad. You need to, at least from what I heard, I didn't see it, so I'm saying from what I judged from Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. But even Independence Day, I bet had a $20 million opening weekend, or better, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this movie's it might have some legs to it.
That's possible.
I could see it making like 15 in its opening weekend and then just sticking around for a month.
Well, it makes me wonder if we're gonna get something like last year's Deus Ex Machina is just what it was called. Because we got that and it had
how much
good
did that end up
legs.
making like overall? I know it ended up winning an Oscar. I know it had some legs to it, and it started out with a slow release and kind of built up, didn't it?
I will look it up on box office. By the way, Independence Day made just under 100 million domestic.
I wonder how
Resurgence.
much that actually cost to make though.
It lost money. Trust me, it was a disappointment, but it made people. A lot of people still went to see it. And this is the part where Albert is on Box Office Mojo.
We also just received another question based on the image that I sent out saying it was time to make the podcast juice.
Okay, one more. I was just gonna say, Ex Machina lifetime gross in theaters $25 million. So not a giant hit.
As far as like cost to what it made, it was probably not too bad.
Fair enough. What was our final question of the day, Tony?
Mr. David Webb, who will be on the podcast next week to review The Shadow of the Vampire,
We hope.
asks us. He actually just confirmed a minute ago.
Awesome.
Who has stuck what where to make Tony smile like that?
Well, only Tony can answer that.
I mean,
but he did just vote.
You
Or no,
can't-
he didn't.
No,
You're thinking
I'm
about
looking
voting.
forward to voting. Really, it's that you guys all stuck around to listen to me tell you about becoming a member at humanechoes.com. That's what makes me smile. If you become a member, $2, $5, $10, $20 over at humanechoes.com. You can keep
Don't
this
forget
podcast.
the $1,000 per month
there is the
Magnificent
1,000
Octoshark level.
If you are some sort of billionaire and you really want to keep this thing going, like that Octoshark bonus, we'll fly you out and have you on an episode if you want to keep doing that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I don't know if we've really figured out the tiers for that one because we, it's not going to happen. But if you become a member,
He's so pessimistic.
That is the number one way to keep this thing running. That is the lifeblood of this. It's worth thousands of YouTube hits. It's worth thousands of article clicks. Even at the $2 level, like it just really, really helps us out. You also get access to the bonus podcast, which is our favorite product to make. We just sit there, we giggle like just little kids. It's fun. It's just a great product. You get to see Joe, or you get to listen to Joe. You don't get to see him. He's always mysterious unless he's on a stream. You don't get to see his like luscious hair on the podcast. But anyway,
we do talk about, it's not just giggling. We actually learn stuff sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
Last bonus podcast we did was very light on the giggling, but I thought
the last bonus podcast we did during Extra Life was more cackling than anything.
Well, yes, that one. I'm talking about the last official bonus podcast.
Yeah. But as far as the bonus podcast goes, it's a lot of fun. We also like to send out stickers for certain levels. We send out pins. We sent out our second pin a while back, and I've really liked the way these have turned out. They're just a lot of fun. If you sign up now, and while supplies last, you'll get both sets of pins. I think that's at the $10 a month level. Basically, if you enjoy this podcast, it is the number one way to keep us going. So thank you guys for that. If you buy stuff from Amazon and you want to support the podcast without having to spend anything extra, if you click on the Amazon link at humanechoes.com and then do your shopping, we will get a 4 to 8% cut depending on what you buy. And that really helps us out. We have several people buying office supplies all the time. We have people buying board games, bikes, tables, all sorts of cool stuff on there. And whenever we get a cut of that, it's an awesome way to support us. So thank you very much for that. Leave a review, tell your friends. Next week, we'll be back with Mr. David Webb, who recently won his round in the Writers Arena to go into the finals once again.
Wow,
and we will be
he
talking,
deserves it. He's good.
Yeah, he's
Man's
very
good.
He's consistent. He's good. He's very British. He's got a good voice. So, we'll see him next week. We'll be talking about, I believe it's John Malkovich, The Shadow of the Vampire.
Yes.
So,
I mean, it's just called Shadow of the Vampire. John Malkovich is in it, though.
Yeah, it's not like being John Malkovich where it's like Nosferatu with a bunch of people saying Malkovich 700 times and John Cusack going into people's brains. So,
it is like Nosferatu, though. This is a movie about the making of Nosferatu, positing that Dracula or Nosferatu, the guy, not Max Landis. Anyway, it's like, what if there was a real vampire on the set of Shadow of the Vampire? I've stopped being able to talk.
Yeah. It's about Nosferatu. That's all we need to know. We will see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Friends, what do you ask of your clothing? If you're like me, not much, I'm sure. Just the important things. Comfortable fit, classic styling, and trendy designs that catch the eye. If these are what you ask of your clothing, then TeePublic T-shirts from the good folks of the Human Echoes podcast is the answer you're looking for. Yes, the fine chaps at the Human Echoes podcast spared no expense in bringing you the Octoshark. No spoilers and more at prices that won't break the bank. And do these trendy designs turn heads? You betcha. Put on one of these T-shirts and why, even perfect strangers will tell you, "Hey, bub, you've got a lot of nerve." Yes, sirree. These T-shirts are made from the finest artistic craftsmanship and guaranteed to make you the talk of the town. And they're cotton, so they feel good on the skin and breathe deeply like an Octoshark ought to. TeePublic T-shirts from the Human Echoes podcast. Buy yours today and get hella ripped.